The rain in Busan didn't just fall, it arrived as a torrential weight, a liquid curtain that threatened to drown the neon soul of the Seomyeon District. Kaelen, the architect Wu, sat in the passenger seat of a stolen charcoal-gray sedan, his breath hitching as the windshield wipers struggled to clear the smear of sapphire and crimson lights bleeding across the glass. His knuckles were bone-white, his fingers aching from the rhythmic, desperate pressure he applied to the $5 billion encrypted drive tucked into his tactical vest. Behind them, the predator roar of 4 black tactical SUVs cresting the overpass shook the very chassis of their car. These were the minister's cleaners, elite wraiths who didn't just follow a trail, they calculated the most efficient way to end it. Kaelen glanced at his tablet, the screen flickering with a heat map of the city's defensive grid. "They've tagged the car's thermal signature," he rasped, his voice a dry friction against the roar of the storm. "We have 30 seconds before the bridge lockdown is complete. If those gates drop, we're in a kill box." Sloane didn't look at him. Her hands were relaxed on the steering wheel, her gaze fixed on the shifting geometry of the traffic ahead. She wasn't driving against the city. She was moving through its fractures. "I don't need 30 seconds, she said, her voice a calm, lethal anchor in the rising tide of Kaelen's panic. "I need you to hold on." She shifted gears with a sharp mechanical click. The engine let out a guttural howl, and the sedan lunged forward, weaving between 2 massive transport trucks with a precision that defied the laws of physics. Kaelen felt the world tilt, the neon blur of the city becoming a vertical smear as Sloane took a sharp, high-speed turn into a narrow service alleyway. The screech of tires against wet asphalt was a scream that was quickly swallowed by the thunder. This was the beginning of Neon Blood, the moment where the $5 billion secret became a high-speed target. The alleyway was a labyrinth of steam pipes and overflowing trash bins, the brick walls closing in like the ribs of a giant. Sloane didn't slow down. She used the narrow space to break the line of sight, her eyes scanning the mirrors for the red laser sights she knew were coming. "The thermal tag is active," Kaelen shouted, his fingers flying over his tablet as he tried to spoof their signature. "They have a tactical drone overhead. It's painting us for a missile lock." As if on cue, a high-pitched electronic whine filled the cabin. Sloane didn't flinch. She reached into the footwell and pulled out a heavy phosphorus flare gun. "Open the sunroof," she commanded. Kaelen hesitated, the rain already battering the glass like 1,000 tiny hammers. "Now!" she barked. He hit the switch, and the roar of the storm flooded in, soaking his dark hoodie in seconds. Sloane leaned out, fired a blinding white canister into the air, and then sharply braked, sending the sedan into a controlled 180-degree spin. The phosphorus flare burst into a miniature sun, whitewashing the drone's sensors and creating a localized electromagnetic storm. The missile lock whine died instantly. Before the drone could recalibrate, Sloane had already floored the accelerator, disappearing into the subterranean entrance of a shopping mall parking complex. The darkness of the garage felt like a temporary tomb. Sloane killed the lights and let the car coast into a shadow-drenched corner behind a row of concrete pillars. Kaelen sat in the silence, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, his hands shaking so violently he had to tuck them under his thighs. He looked at the drive, the $5 billion reason for this chaos, and realized that his life as a man of logic was officially dead. In this city, the math didn't save you. Only the ghost did. "In this city, the neon is pretty," Sloane said, her eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting of the garage as she checked the chamber of her sidearm. "But the blood in the gutters is real." She looked at Kaelen, her expression devoid of the adrenaline he was currently drowning in. "The minister isn't just hunting an accountant anymore, Wu. He's hunting a breach in his empire. That $5 billion deal you froze was his entry fee into a new kind of power, and he'll burn every block in Busan to get it back." Kaelen managed to slow his breathing, looking at the woman who had become his only shield. He realized that Sloane wasn't just a protector. She was a reminder of the cost of his choices. He had moved from a $32,000 retainer to a war that couldn't be settled with money. "The bridge lockdown didn't work," Kaelen whispered, checking his tablet. "But they've declared a level 4 emergency. They're shutting down the cell towers, We're losing the grid. Sloane nodded, her predatory focus already shifting to the next move. Then we stop playing by their rules. If they want to turn the city into a cage, we become the tigers. She gestured for him to get out of the car. They were ditching the sedan. It was a thermal beacon, a steel coffin waiting for a second missile. They needed to move through the city's underbelly, the places where the neon didn't reach and the cameras were blind. Kaelen pulled his dark hoodie up, the plastic casing of the $5 billion drive pressing painfully against his hip, a constant, heavy reminder of the weight he carried. They emerged from the garage into a back street in the Seomyeon District, the rain still relentless. The city felt different now, hollowed out, tense, as if it were holding its breath. Every siren in the distance sounded like a personal threat. Sloane led him toward a nondescript apartment building, her movements a masterclass in urban stealth. She didn't use the main entrance. She led him through a service door hidden behind a stack of shipping crates. Inside, the hallway smelled of stale cooking and ancient dust. "We have a contact here," Sloane said. "A data broker who owes me a favor. He has a pirate satellite link that can bypass the minister's blackout." The data broker, a man known as the Glitch, was a ghost in his own right. His apartment was a fortress of mismatched monitors and humming server racks, the air thick with the scent of ozone and cigarettes. When he saw Sloane, his eyes widened in a mix of terror and respect. "The world's governments have been screaming about you all morning," he rasped, gesturing toward a screen showing a news report of the garage explosion. "And now you bring the architect to my door?" Sloane didn't waste time on pleasantries. She pointed to Kaelen. "He has the $5 billion. We need to verify the final layer of the encryption and prepare a global broadcast." The Glitch swallowed hard but moved to a high-end workstation. Kaelen sat down, his fingers finding their rhythm on the keys. For the first time since the high-rise, he felt a flicker of control. He wasn't just a fugitive. He was the only one who could unlock the digital guillotine. As the data began to scroll across the screen, he saw the true face of the minister's corruption, a blueprint for a shadow government bought and paid for with $5 billion of stolen public funds. But as the decryption bar hit 70%, a red warning light began to pulse on the Glitch's console. "They've found the handshake," the man cried, his voice pitching up in panic. "The minister's cyber division. They've traced the link. They're 4 blocks away and closing." Sloane was at the door in an instant, her weapon drawn. "How much longer, Wu?" she demanded. Kalen's eyes were fixed on the progress bar. 2 minutes. If we break the connection now, the $5 billion vanishes into a black hole. Sloane didn't hesitate. She looked at the Glitch. "Tell me you have a backdoor exit." The man pointed toward a small, reinforced ventilation shaft. Sloane turned back to Kaelen. "Finish it. I'll hold the hallway." She stepped out into the corridor, her silhouette a dark promise of violence against the flickering fluorescent lights. Kaelen poured every ounce of his brilliance into the final encryption break, weaving the $5 billion evidence into a public blockchain that couldn't be erased. Outside, the first wave of cleaners arrived. They didn't use the stairs. They rappelled from the roof, shattering the hallway windows. Sloane met them with a ferocity that seemed born of pure betrayal. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was paying a debt to the dead, using her lethal efficiency to ensure Kaelen could finish the job. Kaelen heard the muffled thuds of bodies hitting the floor and the sharp, rhythmic barks of Sloane's weapon. He didn't look back. He watched the screen, his heart hammering against his ribs until the final green, handshake complete prompt flashed. The $5 billion secret was no longer a secret. It was a payload ready to drop. "Got it!" Kaelen yelled, pulling the drive from the rig. The Glitch was already scrambling into the ventilation shaft. Kaelen followed, the cramped space smelling of cold iron and desperation. Behind him, he heard a flashbang grenade detonate in the apartment, a white, deafening roar that signaled the end of their sanctuary. They emerged into a damp alleyway 3 blocks away, Sloane appearing from the shadows moments later, her leather jacket torn, but her expression unchanged. She grabbed Kalen's arm and pulled him toward a waiting motorcycle. "The neon is dying, Wu," she said, looking up at the darkening skyline. "The city is officially under martial law. The long walk starts now." They roared through the outskirts of the district, the motorcycle a black streak against the rain. The minister had stopped pretending this was a police matter. Armored personnel carriers were now patrolling the main arteries of Busan. Kaelen felt the weight of the $5 billion drive like a physical burden, a target painted on his soul that even the ghost's protection couldn't fully erase. They reached a derelict clock tower overlooking the harbor, a skeletal structure of rusted gears that offered a temporary blind spot in the city's surveillance net. As they huddled in the shadows of the massive iron gears, Kaelen looked at Sloane. "You could have taken the $32,000 and left me at the port," he whispered. "Why are you staying?" Sloane didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the minister's ships preparing for the coup in the harbor below. "Because, Kaelen, the world is full of people who take orders. It's rare to find someone who looks at the numbers and says no. You're the only person who can burn their kingdom down, and I've always liked a good fire." She reached out and touched the drive in his vest. "That $5 billion isn't your shield anymore. It's our torch. And tomorrow, we're going to use it to show the world why they should have been afraid of us from the start." The storm over Busan showed no signs of breaking. As the neon lights flickered and the city prepared for the final confrontation, Kaelen Wu realized that he was no longer just an accountant running for his life. He was an accomplice to a legend, a ghost in the making. The blood in the gutters was real, but so was the truth they carried. They sat in the silence of the tower, the rhythmic groan of the gears a countdown to the end of the world as they knew it. The hunt was far from over, but as the first light of a bruised dawn began to touch the horizon, Kaelen felt a grim, newfound resolve. He was the architect of their downfall, and with the ghost of the world at his side, he was ready to watch the minister's empire